Hey everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday, but in a less raucous way than usual because it's been a pretty bad week for wrestling all in all. However, we're still gonna get down because it is Friday and it is my favorite time of the week, and you know why that is. It's because it's time to talk about my wrestlers of the week. I'm in pain right now because on the way out of my bedroom where I was typing up the notes for this video, I hit my foot on my bed on the way out and it's hurting still, and I feel like Goldberg when he headbutts the locker room door before he goes out for a match to get himself fired up, but it's kind of had the opposite effect on me and I'm feeling quite fragile. But nevertheless, I will soldier on as we take a look at all of the best wrestlers of this week. Been a bit of a reduced week in terms of action. We've only really got WWE and AEW to consider, but there were some good performances here and there, so let's break it all down. Let's take a look at all of my lovely wrestlers of the week. First off though, a big honourable mention to the legend that is Howard Finkel, who sadly passed away this week. The greatest ring announcer of all time, one of those voices that you just instantly associate with wrestling the moment that you hear it, and a really nice guy by all accounts as well. So condolences to all of his friends and family. What a legend, Howard Finkel. Now on to number 10, picking up 1 point this week. 70-year-old action Mike Jackson. Jackson took part in a bit of a thriller of a match, and he wasn't even bad. Clearly before he came to the ring, he took a look at the man in the mirror and thought, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be starting something. Yeah, I've nailed it. Jackson was brought into the Impact show to face Johnny Swinger, who's in his 40s himself, but that's nothing like being 70, and putting on the kind of performance that Mike Jackson did, despite his advanced age. He was a bit of a slippery customer in the ring. He was a bit of a smooth criminal, you might say. The whole gimmick of this match was basically like Johnny Swinger as the heel is saying, oh, bring out my young, hungry opponent, see how I match up against him, I'm going to really test myself. Then he brings out this old dude, this local wrestler, who has apparently appeared in many NWA territories before, and even WCW in the 90s. However, he's not been on TV for like 2 decades or something, but he came out, maybe 3 decades even, but he came out and he pushed Swinger really close and he gave a really good performance, and it was excellent. It was really good fun. Sometimes the best stories in wrestling are the simplest, and there's nothing more simple than getting behind a massive underdog who doesn't look like he's going to be able to do what he can do. It's really good stuff. It's like when a singer gets someone out of the crowd and it turns out they can actually sing, or it's that sort of thing. You're not expecting it unless you're familiar with Mike Jackson, and then he goes and he's doing old schools, he's doing Hurricane Ranas and stuff. It was amazing. He's an absolute physical specimen, and he deserves his 1 point on this week's Wrestlers of the Week. Number 9, picking up a victory on Dynamite this week. It's none other than Norfolk's own. That's how you pronounce it, by the way, ring announcers of AEW. Norfolk's own Superbad Kip Sabian. Sabian took on Chuck Taylor on Dynamite this week in a build-up to his first round match in the TNT Championship tournament against, I believe, Dustin Rhodes, and because of that, I think, Kip Sabian was able to pick up a victory here. He didn't do it alone, however. He was helped, as always it seems, by Penelope Ford, and also by Jimmy Havoc, his IRL bestie, best mate, who came out from the crowd and helped knock Orange Cassidy off the apron and destroyed Orange Cassidy on the outside because Cassidy was trying to get involved. That's going to set up Havoc versus Cassidy, but let's focus on the match for a second as well. Before all these shenanigans sort of happened, the opening half of this match was actually very well wrestled, which was great for both Kip Sabian and Chucky T. I mean, Chuck Taylor is such a comedic character and so funny on social media and stuff, you can often forget what an excellent in-ring technician he is. And the same could be said for Kip Sabian. Those who are more familiar with him from the UK independent scene, like myself, may not be too surprised about this. However, those who aren't too familiar with him might have been surprised, because so often there's all these antics and Penelope Ford's getting involved and he's being a Weasley little heel and stuff, but when he wrestles, he can actually go really well. And Sabian did, of course, pick up the victory. Now, I'd be lying if I said I was more excited for Sabian versus Dustin than I am for Jimmy Havoc versus Orange Cassidy. However, that doesn't mean I'm not excited for Sabian versus Dustin. I think that could be a really cool match. Interesting, unique matchup, and Dustin Rhodes is often excellent at bringing out the best in his opponents. So 2 points for Kip Sabian. That's his taunt, isn't it? 2 points for Kip Sabian. Now moving on to number 8, the current WWE Champion, Drew McIntyre. Drew had a bit of an eventful Raw and would have probably finished higher on this list this week if it wasn't for the brevity of his match. It only lasted about 5 minutes, and it really was more of a device to set up his next feud rather than a match to be a good match in and of itself. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a good performance from Drew kind of throughout Monday Night Raw this week. He opened the show, cut in a promo, had a war of words with Andrade, or more accurately with Zelina Vega, who was obviously doing all the talking for Andrade, or most most of it. And then he obviously faced Andrade in a big champion versus champion clash in the main event of the show. And it was a good performance from Drew. It was a good performance from Andrade as well. I just wish that Andrade had got a bit more offense in. There were some nice callbacks to their match at TakeOver War Games 1, I believe. Where was it, War Games? Yeah, I think so. Where Drew lost the NXT Championship to Andrade and was injured in the process. There were some callbacks to that, but all in all, the match only went about 5 minutes, the match this week, and I wish Andrade had got a little bit more in. Then, of course, after the match, Drew was attacked by Seth Rollins, who is a curious choice for his next opponent, given the fact that he lost a big match to Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. But I guess if that's who they want in that position, that's who it's going to be. Seth Rollins is one of the biggest stars on the roster, after all. So that was Drew on this week's Raw, a focal point of the show, a decent match, if a short one, against Andrade, and good work on the mic. 3 points for Drew McIntyre. He's still the champion for now. Don't bring the Big Show back and have another match against him, please. I'm scared of that prospect. Number 7 this week, picking up 4 big points, it's Finn Balor, who is still angling for that match against Walter, that UK Championship match, which I guess is still going to happen at TakeOver Dublin, if indeed that show is postponed to like a solid date. I can't quite remember if it has been or not. Please someone let me know in the comments section down below. There's just been so much news over the past few weeks. So Balor obviously took on one of Walter's stablemates in Imperium this week on NXT in the opening match, I believe, and it was a good match. I mean, that's not really a surprise. Aichner's brilliant, Balor's excellent, of course, it's Finn Balor, and they can both be relied upon to deliver a high octane opening, start to the show. Balor picked up the victory, which is absolutely the right call at this stage with him still feuding with Walter, but it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because Balor's in a strange position in NXT when he shockingly, moved back to NXT and turned heel and was just the focal point of, it seemed like, everything. That felt right, he's a huge star. Now he's kind of slipped into this weird sort of purgatory situation. That's because even though he turned heel, and even though, he was doing a great job as a heel and he had an excellent match with Johnny Gargano at a TakeOver event, he's now kind of a babyface again because he's going up against Imperium, and make no mistake about it, if that TakeOver Dublin match does go ahead, Walter versus Balor, the crowd are going to be rabid in favour of Finn Balor. And that is honestly one of those matches that once this whole situation is said and done and things get back to normal, that is one of the matches that I'm most looking forward to. I just really, really hope that they save that for whenever fans can start attending shows again, because Balor versus Walter in an empty arena is nothing. It's not even a tenth of the match that Walter versus Balor in Ireland could be. Next up on the list, it's number 6 and part of probably the best match on the show on this week's Monday Night Raw. It's the Empress of Tomorrow, the Cry Green Teary lady. That's her nickname. It's Asuka. Now, I reported on a news video not too long ago that Asuka is in line for a push because reportedly Vince McMahon is very impressed with Asuka's hard work recently, and I have to agree. Don't agree with everything that Vince McMahon does, certainly not this week, but I do agree with him on this point. Asuka does deserve a push. The only reason that it hasn't happened yet is because Charlotte Flair had to beat her at WrestleMania 34 and then beat her again for the SmackDown Women's Championship in the build-up to WrestleMania 35. No, it's fine. I'm over it. I'm easy, guys. I'm over it. It's fine. So yeah, Asuka's had a hard time of it. She's not really ever received a sustained push. Yes, she's been SmackDown Women's Champion. Yes, she's been WWE Tag Team Champion. But at the same time, I feel like it's been nowhere near the level of push that Asuka deserves. And in these sort of lockdown times, Asuka has just been everywhere, man. She's been on Raw, she's been on SmackDown, she's been at WrestleMania, of course. She's been wrestling in singles matches, tag matches. She's been on guest commentary. She's been cutting promos in Japanese that nobody understands, but we all seem to love in a way. And I just feel like Asuka is deserving of this push, and she made another big claim towards that this week in that match against Ruby Riott. Asuka versus Ruby Riott was probably the best match on Raw this week, and certainly the best of the women's Money in the Bank ladder match qualifiers. Elsewhere, Nia Jax pretty much squashed Kairi Sane. Shayna Baszler actually did squash Sarah Logan, and then she got released 2 days later. But this match, Asuka versus Ruby Riott, was a good back and forth, well-wrestled contest. Asuka picked up the victory, which is the right decision, but the question is, would I like to see her win that women's Money in the Bank briefcase? I'm going to say no, probably not, just because I really want Sasha Banks to win it. But if there was going to be a second pick for me, that would likely be Asuka, yes. I certainly wouldn't be annoyed or disappointed if Asuka were to win that match. Next up, number 5, everybody died. Lance Archer from AEW. He's evil and he's massive. Lance Archer picked up another victory on Dynamite this week. This was his most hard-fought victory, though, since signing with AEW. He's just been squashing people for the most part, but this time he had a hard-fought, sort of 10-minute back and forth encounter with Boom Boom. Colt Cabana. I say even, it was kind of 70-30 in Archer's favour, but whenever Colt was back on offense, Archer was struggling a little bit, and I think that's an interesting dynamic to this match. I think it was the right call as well. I wouldn't be interested in seeing Archer just squashing each and every opponent until he finally gets that match with Cody. I think there needs to be some sterner tests in his way, and it's not like Colt was like throwing him all over or anything. Colt was having to use his experience and his cunning to try and even stay on the same level as Archer. But Archer did win the match, and I think that was the right call, and he also, during his entrance, just flattened some poor boy in the front row. I don't even know who it was. It was on the babyface side of the crowd, but he disappeared from shot so quickly after Archer hit him. So a good week for Lance Archer. Not much more to say though, really. So we're going to move on swiftly to number 4 this week, and it was Matt Riddle's mystery partner to defend the NXT Tag Team Championship against the Undisputed Era, and his name is Timothy Thatcher. Thatcher caused a bit of a stir when he signed for WWE because people weren't annoyed at him for going to WWE and, you know, pursuing that avenue of his career, but they were annoyed that WWE were taking all of these beloved kind of near legends of the independent scene, and Timothy Thatcher, especially in Germany and WXW, was so highly thought of. So hopefully he can be used really well in NXT, and this was a decent start, you know. Obviously this came about because Pete Dunne is stuck in the UK. He can't fly over and defend his tag team titles alongside Matt Riddle, so Riddle had to fight with a mystery partner. Now I thought that they were going to have Riddle just chance upon someone backstage and almost kind of charm them into teaming with him, like, bro, come on, team with me, dude. I'm really cool as well. But instead it was Pete Dunne who picked the partner, probably a wise tactical decision, and he picked someone similar to him in terms of sadism and ruthlessness, Timothy Thatcher. Thatcher looked great here. The match was a good one as well. You know, both the Undisputed Era lads, who in this match were Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong, they wrestled really well. Riddle was captivating as always, but obviously the star of the show here, because it was his debut, was Timothy Thatcher. I don't know if Thatcher's best as a babyface though. I understand why they brought him in as one, but I think he might be better used later on as a bad guy, because he's just so menacing and he just looks evil. You just look at it, well, he's happy there, but ignore that. He's evil, really. I mean, his surname's Thatcher, how could he not be? Anyway, so Timothy Thatcher making his debut on NXT, he picks up 7 points this week on Wrestlers of the Week, and I suspect could pick up quite a few more in the future. Next up, number 3. Now this one could divide a bit of opinion, because I saw that the match he was in divided quite a lot of opinion. In fact, some people were saying it was really bad. I don't think that. I enjoyed the match for what it was. I just think it could have been a lot better. But the performance of Jon Moxley earns him 8 points this week. The hype for this match was, the self-generated hype by AEW for this match was pretty unreal, to be honest. They had a lot of people talking about how good it was going to be, Tony Khan included on Twitter. They had these guest people like making predictions via video call, like Ariel Helwani, the Meltzer of MMA. Just various, Taz obviously doing his technical breakdown of Jake Hager's submission as well. And in the end, the match disappointed a lot of people, but I thought Moxley's performance was really good. Honestly, the match really suffered with the lack of a crowd, Hager not being able to get heat from anywhere. Moxley still did a good job of firing up, but again, it was a bit awkward in that silent Daly's Place in Jacksonville. But Moxley did a good job of, like, especially when he was caught in that ankle lock towards the end, of really selling the emotion and the grit and the determination of the match. Did the match go a bit too long? Yeah, it did. It did. That was certainly a negative about the match, but a positive for me would be the way that the storyline building up to it fed into the action itself. So we had Hager being able to brush off almost 1 or 2 paradigm shifts until that final one on the steel chair was enough to put him away. We had Moxley really showing an interest in grappling and amateur wrestling, and there was a big deal made about how he'd been MMA training in the build-up to this fight. So I kind of liked it for what it was. I don't really agree with a lot of people saying it was the worst thing ever. I think people are just sick of these long empty arena matches such as Edge Orton, Gargano Ciampa, and now of course Moxley Hager. I wonder who Moxley's going to face next. I don't really know who it could be. It probably has to be a heel. But everyone else seems either tied up in stuff or just not having anything going on at the minute. Could be Jeff Cobb if they get him back in, but I imagine they'll have to wait to make big roster changes until after everything's settled down and gone back to normal. So an interesting question there, but 8 points for Jon Moxley. He is number 3 on this week's top 10. Next up, Akira Tazawa is my number 2 this week after picking up a big and important victory in the opening match of that interim Cruiserweight Championship tournament on NXT. Tazawa faced Isaiah Swerve Scott. They're both really good. The match was a good one. I'd have enjoyed it if it had a little bit more time dedicated to it, but it was fast-paced, it was eventful, and I just think Akira Tazawa is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the world. I don't know if underrated is the right word, because people do know know how good he is. Although a lot of people maybe don't. Maybe in the eyes of many, he is underrated. But I think the word I more accurately want to use is underused or misused, because he's so good and so funny when he wants to be as well. But he's just an excellent babyface. He's so good at selling and bumping, but also when he fires up, he's really awesome at that as well. I'm delighted that he got the win here, even though I am also a big fan of Isaiah Swerve Scott. But Tazawa is the man, and I honestly wouldn't be annoyed if he went on to win the whole tournament. Actually, maybe I would be, given Drake Maverick's in the tournament as well, and everybody in the world wants him to win. But if Tazawa won, that would be like a close second for me, probably. Now, for those who don't know what the interim cruiserweight tournament is, it's basically to find a new interim cruiserweight champion, because like Pete Dunne, Devlin is stuck overseas and can't defend his title. Now, just to try and work out who's going to win this tournament, I'm going to take a look at the people involved and see if I can work it out. So, Group A, we've got Kushida, Drake Maverick. They could both realistically win, although the fact that Maverick has been released, unless that's a work, which I very, very much doubt it is, I can't really see him winning. Tony Nese and Jake Atlas as well. Now, out of those four, I can see Kushida going on to face Devlin the most, but obviously we've also got Group B to contend with too. In Group B, we've got Akira Tazawa and Isaiah Swerve Scott, as I've mentioned, but we also have El Hijo del Fantasma, who was one of my favourites in Lucha Underground as King Cuero. He is awesome. And Gentleman Jack Gallagher as well. Out of those, I think Kushida will win, but I want it to be Drake, Tazawa, or Fantasma. Not sure which. That's a really hard choice. Well, it's Drake Maverick, isn't it? But out of the other two, it's a really hard choice. And number one this week, and my wrestler of the week. I'm getting so violent today, I don't know why. Picking up 10 big points, it's only Lorcan. Now, I'll be honest with you, this has been a bit of an uneventful week, just because there's not much wrestling going on. And because of that, only Lorcan has decided I'm going to have 2 good matches in the space of a week, and that's enough to get him the big 10 points. And what's more, he didn't even win a match. So Lorcan wrestled on Friday night last week on 205 Live. He lost to Gentleman Jack Gallagher, but by DQ, because Tony Nese jumped Gallagher in the ring, and that led to, the match ending. Then Lorcan and Birch had a bit of a ruckus at the end, and Birch just kind of saved Lorcan at the end, but basically, Lorcan's performance in the match I thought was really good. You forget how captivating his matches can be when he just starts just slapping people full on in the chest. It's really, sometimes in the face as well. He's really good at slaps. And as we all know, slaps equals claps, rounds of applause. On Raw as well, only Lorcan had a match against Aleister Black. And again, I mean, as you'd expect really, he lost that one. But again, that was a very entertaining match. Maybe one of the best on Raw alongside Asuka and Ruby Riott. In fact, I'm going to have to say it was probably the best one. I'm sorry, Asuka. I know earlier I said yours was the best match on Raw, but no, it was probably this one, in my opinion. And again, Lorcan lost, but Aleister Black is probably going to beat someone on the level of only Lorcan. But Lorcan's performance, once again, was brilliant. He's one of those people who I find quite strange, because when he comes out for a match, everyone's a bit like, oh, whatever. Not fans like you and I, not clever ones, but the vast majority of the WWE universe are like, ugh. It's this guy, and sometimes his tag team partner. And then he starts wrestling, and everyone's like, oh my God, this dude is a killer. And I was guilty of it as well a year or two ago, when it was him and Danny Burch against, I believe, the Undisputed Era in the opening match of a TakeOver that was just blow away excellent. So we've maybe all been guilty of underestimating Oney Lorcan, or Mr. Busick, as I'm going to call him. But not this week. This week he has had 2 good matches. He's not picked up any wins, but he's had 2 great performances, and that's enough to make Oney Lorcan my wrestler of the week. And he's funny on Twitter as well, so check out his Twitter account. Now, let's take a look at the league table. So as we can see, Kenny Omega is still number 1, but Jon Moxley is closing that gap. A little bit further down, current Cruiserweight champion Jordan Devlin is waiting to find out who he'll face at the end of this interim championship tournament. And there's Drew McIntyre up into the top 10 after a good win over Andrade in the main event of Raw this week. But generally, there's not been a whole lot of changes, just because, as I mentioned, there's not been a great deal of wrestling. Thank you very much for watching this video. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Can anybody catch Kenneth Omega? We shall find out in due course. Thanks once again. Keep safe out there, and I'll see you very soon.